Slayer! Hi, I'm Tom. The Nemesis Dreadknight is one of the coolest models in the Grey Knights armoury, but it's long been hated on by the community due to bearing some resemblance to a baby carrier. Here's a side-by-side comparison, see if that's true. A new version of the Dreadknight was released recently, and according to the fanbase, unfortunately, it's still not cool enough. I like it, but I think we can make it even better. So I decided to kitbash my own using the Horus Heresy Saturnine Dreadnought. Unfortunately, Pete the Wargamer already beat me to this. His is amazing, but I think the gyros on the Dreadknight are so iconic and the legs that they still need to be included. And also, if you love Grey Knights, please check out smbarn40k on Instagram. His kit bashes, particularly of Dreadknights, are amazing. He uses Sentinel legs and bits of Space Marine Dreadnoughts to achieve the look. To me, the arm gyros, long legs and armour plating are what make the Dreadknight unique. I'm going to try and incorporate as much of those things as possible. I'll be removing the baby, and I think that the Saturnine Dreadnought chassis is large enough to realistically hold a pilot. I'm also not sure if I'll include the Saturnine chestplate, as it may make the model look too different to the Dreadknight. Even though there's a baby on the front, it is open topped. So, I got the main bits of the model built first, before moving on to fitting them together. Bibbidi bobbidi boop. This is one of my favourite bits of kit bashing. It's like building Lego with no instructions. You just get to use your imagination. I chose this chest plate with the eagle on, as it seemed the most suitable to Grey Knights. Here's the shoulder chest plate chassis things. They're absolutely beastie. And at this point I'm not sure whether I'll include them or not. These arms are going to be easy to attach to the Saturnine, as they're just a ball and socket joint. And I've not attached them yet until I get the pose correct. And this is the ball socket that sits on top of the legs of the Saturnine. This is going to be very useful for posing the Saturnine Dreadnought. Here's the Dreadknight legs. Yes, I realise I've got the top half on backwards. But these have to be included to me in the kitbash. They're so unique to the Dreadknight. These are what gives it its iconic look. Here I'm just trying to get the gauge of the proportions. So the top half and the bottom half will be in proportion once it's built. When I'm doing the dry fitting, I use pink tack or blue tack to stick the bits together until I'm certain as to where I want them to go. You can do this to get the pose correct and to make any alterations before you glue it. This is at the point that I realised that the hip plate is the wrong way round. So that ball and socket joint will sit on top of this plate, and this will help me pose the torso of the Dreadnought. I think this is going to work. So for the pilot, I've just put the Grey Knight head that was included in the Dreadknight kit into the cavity to see what it will look like. I'm going to do a glow effect from this, like blue glowing up into the helmet. So first thing I did was the shoulder and arm sockets. So this is the Saturnine shoulder, and these are the plates that come on the Saturnine. And on the Dreadknight itself, it has uniquely sculpted shoulder plates with wording on. And I need to include these. I think these are iconic to the model as well. So, funnily enough, it has a spherical side to it which fits almost perfectly around this hinge. This may actually work if I just remove these sort of nubbins on the back. So clip them away and then did a dry fit against the shoulder joint. And as you can see here, it fits really well. And I've not glued the socket in place so that I can pose it. It's still got some up and down motion. So I think this will look good just on its own, but I was trying to incorporate the shoulder pads of the Saturnine as well. More armour the better. So I attached the Saturnine shoulder pad and then tried to fit the Dreadknight one on top. The reason I'm doing this is what the design is like on the legs. So there's a big sort of shin guard and then a knee plate that sits over the top. And I was trying to mimic the look of that. And this could potentially work. So some pink tack just to help me get a feel for if this is going to work or not. And it would maybe work. It looks a little bit too tall, I think, and too too stretched out. So I took off the Saturnine plate and just added the Dreadknight plate over, and it works. It would work with the huge chest plates on as well. So at this point I'm not sure whether I'm going to use them or not. So once I was happy with the shoulder pad, I glued it in place. Then on to the hips and torso. So the Dreadnought has this huge flat plate that the legs connect to, which is actually super convenient for doing this kit bash. So all I needed to do is put the ball and socket lower torso on, work out where it needs to sit, and then I can pose the top half as and when I need. It has this weird lip at the front, which is the hips of the baby. So I cut those off, sanded that down, and then I plan to put one of the shoulder pads from the Saturnine on as like a groin plate. It'll also cover up this sort of weird sanding rough patch. But more armour the better, I think. And then the legs, I don't like that they're not posable. So all it's attached by is this little sort of nubbin that sits up into the top. So all I did is I literally forced the plastic to twist. So I'm doing this gently. I'm twisting it while it's in the hip socket until it gets to the pose I like. And I just want it one pointing to the side and up a little bit. So obviously this puts a bit of stress on the plastic. So once I was happy with the pose, I covered the stressed hinge with sprue goo and glue, and also where the leg sits against the sort of crotch plate, I glued it there as well, so it's actually glued in 2 spots and reinforced. You could also pin this if you're worried about the strength of it, but it seems very sturdy even just after having a bit of sprue goo and stuff over the top. And this is where I'm starting to get the feel for the pose. I'm going to give it a dynamic pose and a huge glaive or hammer or some big weapon, which will be about as long as this knife. So I'm thinking this is the pose I'm going to decide on, I think. So so here you can see the stress sort of fracture of the plastic. So yeah, reinforced it and glued it in place and glued the plates in place. And I glued the ball and socket in place as well. And the feet are attached, but they're not glued. They've just been popped on. They're still maneuverable. Now I'm going to get the sort of standing pose of the feet sorted. So I want it to stand on some form of sort of rock or something, like it's leaning forward with the glaive heading towards an enemy. So I put a bit of corkboard on the base that I've roughed up with some clippers and position it. I position both the feet. Make sure it's on the right balance on the base as well, so you don't want it to be sort of heavy on one side. And then I put the Saturnine torso in place to make sure I've got the pose right of the legs. Once I was happy with where the legs and feet were, I used a bit of thin plastic glue and sort of dribbled it into the feet socket so that it actually glued in place. This is very thin, ultra thin Tamiya glue, so it just runs into the sockets here and actually sort of will dry very quickly and glue the socket in place. Then onto the weapons. So the Dreadnought has some awesome weapons, these massive hammers and these massive swords, like force swords as well. And again, I use pink tack. These shoulders aren't glued in at the socket, so they can move back and forward and sort of up and down as well. And I won't attach them until I'm very happy with the pose of the weapons. So like I said, the arms are in a sort of ball and socket joint, which is very helpful for this kit bash. But the weapons just aren't. It's agile, maneuverable and elegant. And I think a very short-ranged hammer, yeah, it needs to be longer. I think it'd be like a huge two-handed thing. So I want to elongate the weapon. And you know me, I love my glaives. If you've seen my Wraith Knights, I've built some massive glaives on them. So I'm trying to work out the pose here, imagining that there's a huge bit of staff on the end of the weapon as well. And the Dreadnought arms are so cool. What I'm going to do, I'm going to use this brass rod, 2.5 millimeters, and it's almost exactly the right thickness to build a longer weapon handle for these weapons. So I'm going to drill a hole through the middle of the hand and the ends of the weapons, and then attach this brass rod. So I'm going to cut it here and here, and then that will be the front and end on the brass rod. So the sharp knife just cut through one of the ridged bits of the handle, and then on the other side, this knife's not sharp enough. Bink! And then I sanded them down, and then I put a sort of pilot hole in the middle of it. And I lost a little bit of footage here because I shoved the knife into the end of my finger, and I had to super glue it shut. So be careful. And then I got a drill bit that's the same thickness as the brass rod, and we're using the pin vise. I'm just carefully drilling a hole through the middle of the hand, and I want some of this handle to stay behind. I'm not trying to remove the handle at all. I'm going through the middle of it. So I drill one side a little bit, turn it around, drill the other side until it meets in the middle, and then drill all the way through to the other side. And there you go, a big hole for it. This hole is a little bit bigger than the brass rod, so I drill a hole through some of the end of the sword, and then through the front of it as well. And then I super glued it in place. And then this gap here, what I did is I put purity seals over it, but you could also wrap chain around it or some green stuff, or put something to just add to it, but also hide the small cavity. And I've still not glued all this in place. It's just to get the pose right. What I need to gauge as well is how long to make the glaive. Measure twice and cut once is the phrase, isn't it? So I got the arm isn't attached yet, but I'm just trying to get the pose right for the arm. And at this point I've realised these shoulder pads just don't look like a Dreadnought. It's the gyros on the arms that are what make it look like a Dreadnought. They're iconic. So they're very relevant to how I pose the arms, because the arms have these little sockets where the gyros fit on. So the hole here is where the gyro goes, and it needs to line up exactly with the cavity in the shoulder plate. It needs to be in a straight line. So this is very important to when I'm posing the weapon. And this side is a little bit short, so I need to extend the gyro. Calling them gyros, there's probably some 40k word for it. And then for weapons, I went with a Psy Cannon and the big flamer, I forgot what it's called, incinerator thing. And this is the sort of pose I'm going for here with the arms. It looks like it means business. And I've glued the torso in place now as well. And I like this pose a lot. It looks like it's on the hunt. And then it will need this tilt shield, which again is very iconic to the Dreadnought. So once I was happy with the sort of length of the weapon and whereabouts I want it, I glued the end onto it, and then I lined it up with the blade. Just eyeballed this. There we go, nice and straight. There we go, that's the glaive built. So on this arm, like I said, I needed to extend the gyroscope arm a little bit more using some plastic rod. So I just cut out the plastic model kit bit that was there, drilled a hole, and then put plastic rod in it. This is such an easy way of making pistons and things, so made it fit perfectly. And that is the most of the KITBASH done. Made sure I glued this bit in place right at the end. And then I wanted to add some chain, so I thought it would be throwing this glaive at enemies, or it wouldn't want it dragged out of his hands either. So I think a bit of chain is really iconic. So put some through this loop, wrapped it around one side, super glued it where I want it to sort of bend, which is just on this bit of the glaive. leave it there a few seconds to dry, and then carry on wrapping it. And then when I was happy with how the chain was posed, I ran super glue over the top to keep the chain rigid. And then on to painting. So I sprayed the whole model black, including the head, which I'm painting separately. Bibbidi bubbidi boop. As you can see here, it's starting to look awesome, just with a black coat on. And you can see on the legs here, I added the 2 unused tilt shield plates on the top of the legs to just add a bit more armour. It's like the upper thigh. And then I used what I do is to get the blue tint, I mix blue ink into the silver. 3 drops of silver to 1 drop of blue ink. You can do it even stronger if you like, you can do 1 to 1. Because what I do is, so this is a sort of blue silver base coat, and then after that's on, I do a sort of highlight to the panels with just silver. So you have some of the panel as blue silver, and then some of the upper part of the panel as silver. It's like a very subtle sort of blend from blue silver to silver. I've changed the settings on my camera to get it more accurate to what it looks like. So yeah, this is 2 coats of the blue silver. And you see it's got like a cobalt tint to it. And then I wash out the airbrush, and then you use your pure silver to do zenithals on all the big panels. So, but I'm just aiming for the top, imagining you're priming it like a zenithal highlight. This is what it looks like after the silver highlights. And then on to the other colours. So black, all the tubing and sort of armour webbing is going to be all black. There's quite a bit of tubing and cabling on these. So there you go, painting them black. Yeah, here's the black, and then onto the gold. All of the text, the eagle on the chest, any skulls and things like that will be painted gold, retributed gold. And then all of the sort of gyros in the knees and hips and everything as well. So boopity boopity boop. There's the gold and the red. I painted the shield half red, half black. The weapons red as well. And then onto some washes. So Raglan Flesh Shade, I do this over all of the gold. This makes it look amazing. Very rich gold as well. So run the Raglan Flesh Shade into all of the gold recesses. Make sure it doesn't pool like it is here. So I wick out any of the excess. So on the text is the best bit. This is the most fun bit to paint. A good amount of the Raglan Flesh Shade, and then just drag it over the text. Runs into all the recesses and just makes the text pop. Ah, therapeutic. Lovely. And then on to normal model. So I did quite selective wash of the black. So any rivets, any sort of armor panels that have recesses is where I went over. I didn't wash every single surface of the silver. And anything that I left a large tide mark, I just went over with a bit of the silver base colour. And here is what that arm looked like with the black and the black wash and the Raglan Flesh Shade wash. So it's just made the armour pop a little bit. I also put some over the weapon. And then on the purity seals, I just painted them white. And then I used Volupus Pink for the wax. Super vibrant, really bright pink. It's one of my favourite contrast paints, this. I'm not worried about it being too messy because I can re-highlight the red afterwards. So painted all the wax, let the wax dry, and then I went over it with Agrax Earthshade over all of the Purity Seal text ribbon. And then in the helmet cavity,
where the pilot is. I sprayed it all white because I want to do a blue glow effect inside here. So glow is going to come from underneath the helmet. So I stuck the helmet to a sort of paint bottle and sprayed white from underneath using my airbrush. And then I'm going to highlight this white in blue later on to mimic that there's a light beneath it glowing up onto the helmet. And then on top of the chassis, I've got these panels here that I've painted white. I'm going to do a blue glow from them as well. So I've painted the panels white, and then I'm overspraying them with white with my airbrush. So it's like glowing onto surrounding surfaces. And these sort of exhausts on the back as well, I've painted them white, and then I'm doing a white spray around it. I think it's called bloom in the lighting world. So it's bloomed onto the outside. And then for the blade, I'm just going to I'm going to spray white at the very tip and then around the edges of half of it. So it looks like all the energy is focused into the end and the sharp edges of the blade. And then I'm using achromatic blue, which I've got in my airbrush, and here's the glow. So this is what's giving me my glow effect. So I do a thin layer of it, let it dry, and then I did a second layer over the top. Yeah, here's the first layer of blue going on. So the reason I'm doing 2 layers, if you add too much, it'll start wicking and it'll look bad. So the 2 thin layers is the best way forward. So on the side cannon, it had some cells there that were blue as well. And then I wanted to add decals to all these panels. They just look too flat and empty. So I've got these really old Witch Hunter decal sheets, which are perfect. And so I'm going to put one on the right chest. I've got these script things as well. I just soak them in a bit of warm water until it goes soft, and then paint a bit of water over the panel that I'm going to stick it on. And then use a pair of tweezers and a brush and just slide it onto the panel, and then I use the wet brush to move the decal around until it's where I want it to be. You can use the brush to get under the decal and reposition it as well. As long as it's wet, it won't dry in place. Sounds silly, but that's how it works. And then, so I chose to have some sort of scripture to one side, and then an Inquisition symbol on the other side. There you go, it looks awesome. Better than a flat panel, at least. So I've added decals to the plates as well. And then once they've air dried, I apply microsol. So this is like, it basically softens decals and then makes them adhere to the surface they're on. So if you've got a curved surface, it will flatten it down to the curved surface. And then for the base, I've just added some gravel from the beach and sand, added these candles and some skulls, and then I'm doing a glow effect around them. So I'm just spraying white in a sort of area, a circle around each candle. This would be the bloom again from the candle. And then the epicenter of the candle will be orange, and the bloom, which is all the white bit here, will be yellow to show that it's sort of glowing out. So for the orange bit, I use this vivid red orange from Liquitex. It's just a really nice colour, this. I use this for all my fire and glow effects for fire. Just going into the epicenter of each one. When I was painting this, it was quite a humid day. I think it was raining outside, so yeah, you can tell just the ink is a bit thinner than normal, or coming out thinner from the airbrush. So yeah, epicenter of each is orange, and then the yellow ink. So I'm spraying the middle of the candle where the orange is. I'm going over that with the yellow and around onto the white as well, and beyond the white. It really is this simple to get a glow effect. These candles are 3D printed as well. I sculpted them myself. They only took a few minutes. There you go. Looks amazing. And then attach the Dreadknight, and that's the model finished. Please let me know what you think of it in the comments. I think it's a huge upgrade, and it's not too expensive. The Saturnine Dreadnoughts are actually reasonably cheap now for a model that big. What would you do differently? If you want to support me further, please consider supporting me on Patreon, where you get access to my Discord server and see behind the scenes. Thank you to my current Patreon supporters, you're absolute legends. I also have affiliate links in the description below for Element Games, where you get discounted Warhammer and I get commission. And if you like this, check out my other videos. Thanks for watching, bye!